Hello again. Now, the country's current economic troubles are said to be a recipe for disaster. That's the perspective of Efficient Group Chief Economist Dawie Roodt, who's warning, in fact, that things are set to worsen. Dawie says the problem, economic challenges are due mainly to lack of political leadership in steering things in the right direction, in steering the country in the right direction. Well, he's joining us now to further discuss his views. It's really tough warning there about South Africa being in deep trouble. We could be using another word if we were not on air right now about the challenges that we're facing. Deep trouble. How deep is it, Dawie? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. Well, I'm afraid this is nothing new. We know about this. For the past 10 years, the most years on a per capita basis, we've been getting poorer. So it's been a tough 10 years, but especially the last 2 years or so, and I'm afraid for the next couple of years, things are going to get from bad to worse. Now, I can give you some numbers. The reality is that the economy can't grow by faster than 1.5% or say maybe 2% because we just don't have enough electricity. And the population is growing at 1.5%, and it's easy to make the calculations that we're not going to get wealthier, better off. So it's something, there's a small obstacle somewhere, then economic growth is going to be even less than that, meaning that we're going to get poorer. We've got unemployment levels, we know what that is. We've got poverty levels, high levels of poverty, absolute poverty levels. And I'm afraid there are so many people, 32 million people depending on the state for an income every month. The tax base simply cannot carry this anymore. So I'm afraid, a small spark and things can really start get things to really go horribly south, as they say.
You also hold the view, as I've seen, that many of the problems we're facing are self-inflicted, although, of course, there are some global economic challenges that everybody else in the world is facing. What are these self-inflicted problems?
The most obvious example is simply Eskom. And I think what's going to happen to Eskom is pretty much the same what has happened to South African Airways, which is what is currently happening to the Transnet, what is currently happening to the post office. So we have a government that is really not good at running businesses. And in fact, most businesses that are under control of government, the state-owned enterprises, they have been run into the ground financially and operationally. It's not only those state-owned enterprises, which are very important to the economy, it's also the local authorities. The local authorities, 70% of the local authorities are financially not viable anymore. It's not me saying that, it's the Auditor General. If we look at the state's finances itself, the state debt levels, including the state-owned enterprises, is in excess of 80% already. It's unsustainable. Those things are self-inflicted. Those things are not because of the war in Ukraine. Sure. Those things are because of mismanagement by mostly by the government in South Africa. So my point is, we know what the answers is. We know how to fix Eskom. We know how to fix many of these economic problems. It's not going to be easy, but we know what the answers are. The real obstacle is politics. Politics simply standing in the way of implementing those real solutions to get this economy growing. And unfortunately, the politicians, there's so much infighting in the ANC at the moment. They've got the leadership elections around the corner. We've got a general election in 2 years' time. They're not going to govern under these circumstances. They're too busy to make sure that they stay in power. So for all practical purposes, we don't even have a government. So I'm afraid those sort of realities means that the economy is just not going to perform for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, somebody once said the business of government is not business. Business of government is to create an enabling environment through the appropriate policies and frameworks and regulation and let business people run business.
But in a way, and ironically, there's a silver lining here. And the silver lining is that as the state is collapsing and as the state simply stopped providing many services and goods that they're supposed to be doing, the private sector is stepping into that vacuum, and the private sector is providing these sort of services. And there are so many examples. Look at police. We've even privatized the police. There are more than 3 times as many private sector security people than police people. The same is happening to the post office at the moment. The same is going to happen to Eskom. And in a way, we're privatizing all those things. It's very expensive. It's coming at a very huge cost. It's very painful for that to happen. And it's really unfortunate. But in an ironic kind of way, it creates a lot of opportunity for the private sector as well. And the private sector is stepping up to the job. The private sector is getting involved in the economy, and they're putting solars on the rooftops. They're generating electricity. Initially, Gwede Mantashe had a big issue with the private sector getting involved in electricity, but the reality is that the state simply cannot do that, and the private sector, if we want electricity, we have to include the private sector, and that's exactly what has happened.
Now, there are other aspects I want to touch with you before I let you go, but let's just wrap up this political leadership one. You say it's largely, there's an infighting within the ANC that's contributing to a lack of political leadership, like politicians, government people are not present in taking real action. They're too much consumed internally. Does it also speak to this lack of political leadership? Does it also speak to the quality of leaders we have today? What's your view? I know you're an economist, but you've touched on it. I just want to get your view.
Yeah. No, there's something else that's even more important. I think of course, there's a lack of political leadership at the moment for the reasons that I've mentioned. But it goes much deeper than this. We've got a government in South Africa that is left-leaning. There are many of our ministers, like, for example, Ebrahim Patel and Pravin Gordhan, they are communists. So the ideology of the government is a left-leaning socialist communist kind of ideology. But on top of all of that, there are huge levels of simple incompetence. Many of them simply cannot do the job. And we all also know there are many crooks involved in the whole thing as well. So it's a combination of many things. The starting point is wrong because the starting point is socialism, kind of. And like I've said, the real irony is, despite the fact that we've got a socialist, a left-leaning government, they're doing exactly the opposite. They're actually privatizing everything in South Africa.
Okay.
So it's not only a matter of absent leadership, it's more than that.
Okay. The strong views there indeed, Dawie. Now, what about, as we look ahead to 2024, political leadership, the general election maybe could assist? I don't know how it could assist with high levels of unemployment, poverty rising, food and energy prices going up, the Eskom crisis as an example, Transnet and so on, and the seemingly endemic levels of corruption in the public sector. Can we look forward to 2024 as a point at which the country could possibly choose the right kind of leaders going forward?
Yes, and I think that's the solution. You know, I'm not scared. Let me be honest. I used to be scared of democracy. I'm not scared of democracy anymore. And I think we need to fix the political problems in South Africa before we can address the economic problems. And fortunately, the people in South Africa, they can see what is going on. And the people in South Africa, in the end, are the people with the real power. And I do believe that we will see political changes in South Africa. It's not going to be easy to fix the economy, but the answers are there. And we know how to fix the economy. But in the end, it's up to the people of South Africa. And I believe the people of South Africa, as always, will start changing the political trajectory of the country, and that will eventually change the economic trajectory as well.
Dawie Roodt, chief economist at what's the organization now? Sorry about that. He was talking to us from the Efficient Group.